This
all
conference will now be recorded.
hear each other. Do you guys want to just do say hello so we can make sure we're working?
I'm good.
Okay.
Hear me okay?
Hello.
I can hear everybody else.
Great. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll let some folks log on. All right. We're going to give, I think we have one other commission member that we're just going to, I didn't hear from Shaniko that she couldn't make it. And so we'll just give her another minute to log on. All right, I think we'll get started with at least going over the introductions here. First, I want to welcome everyone to the Police Commission meeting on September 16th, 2020. I'm going to go over just some of the basic guidelines that we have for our meetings. First, I just want to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the City of Kingston's Kingston Live channel. You can find the link to the recording by visiting the kingston-ny.gov website and clicking on the agenda for the Police Commission meeting where it will be posted, and that will bring you to the recording. As part of the recording, there will also be a transcript of the meeting. I want to also mention that at the beginning of each meeting, we do have an opportunity for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, we would ask that you reach out to the Secretary of the Police Commission, Minion Dejanette, and email her to be able to request an opportunity to speak, just so we know who to call on. During these virtual meetings, it's a little bit harder than in person. I want to just also mention that when we call this meeting to order, I'm just going to do roll call just to make sure that we know who's here, and folks that may be on the phone may not actually be able to see you. So it's important that we do that. So I'd like to call this meeting to order officially at 4:05 p.m. And so if we could do roll call for the commissioners who are here. Again, Mayor Steve Noble here.
Vinnie DeJeanette here.
Reverend Ken Rivenhoughton here.
Brad Jordan here.
Okay, great. Thank you all for that. And I want to first start by beginning the meeting with any public comments. And so, Minia.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
We have one public comment. I believe the caller's on the line. It's Liz Baker.
Yes. Hi, Minya. Hi, Mayor Noble and everybody else.
Hi, Liz.
I guess I'll start by saying thank you guys for the attempt last week to hear the community's concerns out. I was disappointed by the interferences that, kind of caused a few people to shy away. So that was concerning. Moving forward, I know we're having this issue with the drugs, guns, gangs in Kingston, and something definitely needed to be done. And partnering with the other agencies, it was definitely a good call. But not thinking it through or coming up with a better plan is definitely possibly caused more harm than good, to be honest, as far as community and policing, and, it's been an issue. The shooting has subsided, so, that was an upside. But the fear of police amongst the Black and brown, it's just increased, and it's causing more of a divide since this has all been going on. And what's even more disappointing for me, I guess, is I've been called to several meetings to help bridge the gap between the police and the community, and it's getting harder and harder for me to even, think in that way, because the police that come to these meetings, a lot of times the ones that are meeting with us are ones that I've witnessed firsthand make inappropriate moves when it came to people in the community. And then we hear no more from them. There are some good ones that really do want to bridge this gap, and I feel hopeful, but, it's not looking good, so that kind of concerns me. Don't call for help to bridge a gap if you're not going to do your part when it comes to doing so. So that's really On another note, I experienced a pullover last Friday. I was in the car with some friends, and she was on her way taking me home, but we were pulling into the driveway to pick up her nephew. When I pulled over, a state trooper came to the driver window, speaking to the driver. As soon as we pulled over, the driver immediately let all four windows down, the crack in the two back windows and the two front windows down. She said it's probably about my tent. So she thought that was why they were stopping her. Long story short, the state trooper talks to her. A Kingston police officer is telling me he needs to see my hands. My window is cracked. He's got the flashlight. He not only can see my hands, he can see my entire body. He's upset that I won't let my window all the way down, and he opens up my car door and proceeds to be nasty to me and tell me, well, I'm not pulling you out, as if I'm fortunate for him not to pull me out. And I then told him, I videotaped it. No, I know you're not going to pull me out because you don't have a reason to. But he didn't have his mask up. His attitude was very nasty. Mine was definitely nasty, but his was beyond. And his actions were definitely not acceptable. And for him to state that he felt like he was in danger, the reason why he needed me to roll the window all the way down, I don't see where he felt like he was in danger. You got three women, a handicapped woman basically driving the car, another woman, and me with pizza boxes on my lap. And that just, that kind of bothered me. And that's just a small example of what's been going on in the community with police. I've witnessed firsthand. I've videotaped. I see it every day, at least 2 or 3 times a day, where the police are pulling people out of their cars, they pull them over and then everybody's immediately out of the car, and it's only black and brown people that are being pulled over and pulled out of their car. And I've witnessed this over the last couple of weeks. It's definitely been at minimum 3 times a day that I see this with my own eyes. So that's very, very concerning. And if it's about, the safety in Kingston of our citizens, I'm sure it's not just black and brown people that are making our citizens feel unsafe. So, those are my concerns. I think I'm finished there.
Thank you, Liz.
You're very welcome. Thank you for hearing me out.
Liz, could I just ask one question? Could you let us know when that happened?
This was on Friday. My pullover was on Friday night. It was on Albany Avenue, and it was Officer Peterson.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the call that would like to make a public comment? All right, I'm hearing none. We're going to close the public comment portion of this meeting, and I just want to, state for the record that we do have this opportunity at every one of our meetings each month, and so I would encourage folks, if they would like to let us know their feelings or bring concerns to our attention, that this is a good opportunity for that, to be able to speak with us directly as a group. And if you'd like to do that in the future, please reach out to Minya, and again, the contact information for that is on our website at kingston-ny.gov/police commission. And so I think the first order of business that we have for this evening is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which were posted on our website with the video and the transcription. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Great, that passes. Thank you very much. Up next, we would like to do communications. Have there been any communications that have been received?
We're reading comments from last couple of days that we've got in through email from the compliment forms. Okay.
Yeah, no, so you don't. I don't think for the purposes of saving communications, I think if you want to kind of give the nature of the communication, I don't think you have to read them verbatim as long as they're shared with the commission. I think if there's any specific agenda or topic items that you'd want to bring up out of them, but I don't think you have to reread them all, but just you can note the nature of the communication.
Right. So we have received several emails complimenting and requesting for the increased police presence to stay in the community from concerned citizens that feel like this is a benefit to the community. And that has been the nature of the compliment forms we've received in the last few days and actually in the last couple of weeks. That's
Okay, great. Thank you, Minion, for that report.
So Steve, what's the process going to be going forward now? Because it seems like it's different. So in the past, when if the chief gets a correspondence, say from another agency about an accolade on one of our officers, or if Minya receives like the ones you guys emailed us for the last week, are we entering those into the record the correspondences that we get, we had to kind of come up with some sort of system to keep track of them, all of them, good ones, bad ones, whatever, no matter how you look at it. We need to come on and create a system.
Yeah, and I think that
I don't think you want Minya to read them every single one, right?
Right. So they're going into, I guess, what you'd consider the official public record, when we receive them and when we send them out to the commission. At this point, we're not posting them on our website or anything like that, just, somewhat to protect also the privacy of the individual that's sending us the communications, unless they specifically ask to have them, say, read aloud at our public meeting. But I would say that they're entered into, our public record as a kind of an agency, and then could be available upon request. They're foilable. Obviously, some details may have to be redacted if they were foiled. But that's, I think, for our purposes, that's why we keep track of them all, and we have them, kind of part of that record. If there's a different way that the commission would like to handle them, I'm open to that, but that's generally the concept.
I would just like to see make sure the public is aware we received them. Whoever the individuals are that sent it, we just got to create some sort of mechanism that, John Smith sent one, Mike Jones sent one, whatever. So we received a letter from XYZ. We don't necessarily have to read them unless the individuals ask them, but if they want to hear their comments, if they're free to call in on the public comment period. So I think any correspondence to us, we should just, make everybody aware that we received it and the commission reviewed it.
One of the things that I think we could start, with communications, and if say we use the first of the month or the 31st of the month as a date, any received before that date would then maybe get put on our actual agenda, and it'll just say communication, and it will list who we received them from, and maybe the general nature of what it was about, or at least that could help at least create a public record that's maybe more easily tracked and identified. That seems like, I don't know, what does everyone think of that idea?
Sounds like a good idea. And in fairness to Minion, I don't want to speak for her, but she's a volunteer. I would still, even she's the secretary, sends out the notices. I think we could have someone keep track of them down there. I don't think it's necessarily fair of us to put it on her to have to actually keep that list of who the individuals were that sent the correspondences. And again, a lot of people are going to send them to the chief anyway. So I think we should kind of, whatever Minion's comfortable, but I just, it's going to be awful hard for her to have to get all these emails that some are coming to her, some are coming to the chief, some might come to you or Roy. And I think we should have one central location, and she's the secretary of the commission, which is she's going to send all the meeting notices and things like that. But I think that the actual clerical duties, I don't feel it's fair to put on her.
Thanks, Brad.
She's willing to do it, but
Would this also include the phone calls that we receive as commissioners?
I think that, we, with the phone calls, it is a little bit harder to tell whether those are kind of, public, written statements versus phone calls from constituents. So in our office, we keep a phone log of people that call, but I think that it's, it is a little harder to be able to then digest a phone conversation compared to, say, a written statement. So I do think that it is good for the record to really encourage folks. They of course can call us, but really the best way to kind of put in a formal communication is in writing. And so I would encourage that, and it really we can let Minya think about the best way, and she could work with the chief and Summer to figure out the best way to manage the communications, and we'll support you any way, Minya, that you choose.
Yeah, I think I can handle it.
So maybe we'll start this for kind of next month. So for all of the communications that we received by the end of September, we'll have them listed on our October commission meetings agenda. Does that work for everybody?
Okay. Yes.
And just to Kendra's point, so we're assuming that a phone call is to one commissioner, not a letter. A letter is to the entire commission. So I think we should let people know that if we're going to make it part of the public record, they should either send a letter in or call and and schedule something.
I'll just remind folks that if you're joining us, that we may mute you if we hear background noise, or if you can mute yourself, that would be great, because sometimes it's difficult with these types of virtual meetings. Up next, I think that's good with communications. Okay. I'd like to move on to report of the chief. And
And so Chief, do you have a report for us this month?
I do. Thank you. I know that the two things that most of the public's interested in are, at least from our perspective down here, what we're spending the resources on is certainly the law enforcement partnership that's been occurring since August 6th and the Intimate Partner Violence Initiative. We have modified the IPVI slightly. For those that are listening in, maybe for the first time, it is an initiative taken on through some funding provided by New York State through the GIVE grant in conjunction with the District Attorney's Office and National Networks for Safe Communities down in New York City. And the idea is to identify and then properly treat, whether it's through enforcement efforts or through mental health services, treat individuals that are committing offenses against their loved ones. And so there's an identification procedure. When they rise to a certain level, there's a classification of them depending on the acts that they commit, whether it's verbal, physical, and so on. They are classified, and we have now changed over to a B level classification, what's called or deemed a call-in. The individual is brought in front of a small panel of people, and each person represents a certain segment of what the IPVI is all about. I represent the law enforcement component in Kingston, and we address that particular individual. And because of COVID now, instead of a group atmosphere, it really is more singular one-on-one. So I did complete one today. Again, I think that the idea behind it is to certainly emphasize that violence in any capacity, but certainly intimate partner violence, is a focus of what we're doing here, and that it affects not only the families that are involved, but certainly the community. So I think we've had great success there. There has been a reduction, and I think it doesn't come without a lot of work. There is quite a bit of work going on behind the scenes when we do these things. So I just wanted to make sure. I know we touched on it once before, but I think it's important that the commission realize that this is also an ongoing project that is really out. We play about a third of the role in this, both initially handling the call and then the follow up to it later. But the district attorney's office and the national networks have weekly call-ins that actually contribute to the classification of these individuals. So that's the IPVI. I know with the blue-gray, with the law enforcement partnership, we have seen success. That is, I know some people are concerned about what that success may mean to them, but overall, no one can argue with what we're seeing out there. We have seen a tremendous reduction in the acts of violence. I've talked to a couple of journalists, and they've commented how they haven't had any real stories to write about, and thankfully that's the case. So for us, the violence is really the end of the violence. The reduction in the violence is certainly the reward from all this. So, but to kind of put it into perspective, I have some statistics. There's a lot of numbers involved, but overall, we're looking at traffic stops of about 728 since August 6th, and of those, 624 resulted in warnings. So you can see that really, when it comes time for the enforcement actions, the traffic stops or the infractions that people are getting pulled over for is really a way to create or open up dialogue to see if there's information out there that could lead us to the guns and drugs. So in our case, one gun has been recovered off the street, and over 93 in different capacities, 93 sets of drugs. And I don't have the breakdown of each and every one has been recovered. There's been 18 warrants, both arrest and bench warrants, a total of 132 arrests. And one number that is good to have out there, because it affects not just in the violence part of it, is 19 DWIs. And I think that in and of itself speaks to the volume of what the need exists for this program. So as the breakdown goes, I know there are some concerns. I know the caller called in about the race of the individuals involved. I can tell you from the perspective of the arrests, 49 out of the 84 physical arrests were white males, 21 black males, 10 white females, and 4 black females, is what we're looking at statistically for the numbers. I don't have traffic stops or that broken down to that level. In most cases, the warnings are just documented. The information to the driver normally isn't taken down, or at least in the case of the race, that's not written down. But, you know, in addition to that, the warrants have included robberies, felony assault, parole violations, burglary, criminal contempt, criminal mischief, stolen property, and reckless endangerment. So there has been a large gamut that this particular partnership has resulted in bringing those individuals in front of the court. So, like I said, I understand that the commission had a meeting on the 9th that has listened to the concerns of the neighborhood and to the citizens. I think overall this program has been working. Every time the officers, troopers, and deputies turn out, the command staff, the supervisory staff, lieutenants, captains, and so on, meet with the individual officers and kind of give them the direction they need to go in. And in some cases, it's a matter of hot places or hot people is what we're looking for. And that's really the terms used in the crime analysis world, looking for individuals out there that may have warrants and homes or houses or residents or businesses that have been problematic in the past. So that is the focus, but all the traffic infractions are made when there's probable cause. And I think that needs to be emphasized over and over. And that's always a question. They're stopping me for no reason. The fact is that there is a reason for the stop. And what we encourage from our side of it is that our officers are told, instructed, and have to behave in a professional manner, communicate. We really hope that the public also does that the drivers realize that the place for any type of disagreement or dialogue is really in front of the courtroom, in front of a judge, and not to be taking place in front of the street. So hopefully that's the message we're getting out there. If the commission has any questions.
I do. Thank you for explaining that. I think my question would be in the statistics that you just listed, in just terms of the concerns of people that I've been listening to. And it sounds like the arrests that you've made in terms of demographics versus the people being stopped, we don't actually have access to the statistics of stops. And that's where that's part of the concern, because the stops themselves seem to be predominantly African American men and women. And so if we don't have that data, it's sort of hard to speak to the people that are saying that it's disproportionate stops when the arrests themselves are more Caucasian people, if I've heard you correct. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, or if there's a possibility that we can actually get those statistics of stops themselves.
Well, I think part of it is that in order for the vehicle to be stopped, there has to be probable cause. It's not the race of the driver or the passenger. Our vehicle's being stopped because we've identified the passenger as someone that we need to speak to about a possible warrant that's outstanding. Yes, that's the case. That is the probable cause for the stop. But in all cases, they're not being stopped because of the race. They're being stopped because of some sort of traffic infraction, whether it be an equipment violation, whether it be stop sign. But I don't have access right now to the stats when we're recording that. So the difficulty there is that the driver's license doesn't contain that information. So we would have to come up with some mechanism to ask people what their race would be if it's not readily evident at the time of the stop.
Chief, I got a question. So you said there were 728 stops since 8/6.
Right.
Just to put it in some sort of perspective for all of us, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what would you estimate would be your typical, if we weren't doing this proactive policing, or what 728 is what we did, what would we have done on a normal? What did we do last year in that same time frame? Would you ballpark?
I'd have to guess close to 300.
Okay.
Somewhere's in there. Yeah.
Yep.
There's no doubt, and I'm not, the number of traffic stops has increased because of this partnership. We've effectively put out an additional 6 to 8 cars during this time frame. So sooner or later, a violation is going to be evident, whether the first car misses it and the second patrol car picks it up. But the chances of getting pulled over for a traffic infraction or equipment violation is greater now.
And again, for perspective, and you on a regular shift, are you talking 2 cars, 3 cars per shift? How many extra cars are there from what we would normally have on our own?
Right now, we would say about double. If we're putting about right now about 5 cars on the afternoon shift, we're looking at possibly 10, possibly 11 cars with the partnership going on. you know, just to clarify, the original 5 cars, our 5 cars, are still handling the calls for service. They're more reactive in nature, just kind of answering the calls and being dispatched, where the additional 5 cars are effectively just being proactive, looking for the traffic infractions, looking for the people with the warrants, looking for checking out the hot spots in Kingston.
But we're putting one of our guys in every one of their cars and vice versa, right?
Not everyone, no. In some cases, it's New York State Police with a sheriff's deputy. In some cases, it's a KPD officer with a deputy. And in some cases, it's KPD with state police. So it just varies on the number of officers we have, how many troopers and deputies are working.
But the net result is about twice as many cars as we would typically have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for the chief?
I do have a question. I'm just, if we're saying that the results of these stops is positive, that we've made all these arrests, is there a new instruction on how these stops should be conducted, like how that conversation should go? As we just heard from the caller about how she felt a little bit threatened by the behavior of the officer, implying that she might be a criminal, she's just a passenger.
Yeah, so certainly none of us were privy to the stop. And when Essie spoke about how she felt during that stop, certainly, until we see, until we look and speak to Officer Peterson on it, I don't know what the dialogue was. What we do at the lineup as supervisors, we tell the officers, the troopers, and the deputies, conduct yourself in a professional manner. Make sure you have a probable cause for the stop. Make sure that, and try, when possible, to explain to the individuals the reason for this enforcement action. I think that's something that we've been trying to say all along. Why are we out there? Why is this happening? I think for the most part, the public has been alerted and made aware of this, both from the mayor's newsletters. We put out some Facebook posts on it. So this doesn't come as a surprise. If in any particular case, I know that officers are aware that some individuals feel as if there may be over policing going on, that some individuals are scared of what the officer could do at the scene of a traffic stop. But I can tell you from what we're telling these officers, keep that in the back of your mind when you're trying to explain what's going on.
Okay. Anyone have any other follow-up questions for the chief?
I just wanted to add, when we talk about instructing the officers to conduct themselves with professionalism, maybe it's worth spelling out what you mean exactly, or even the recipients, the folks who are being stopped, how they feel professionalism can be brought across to them, and maybe the manner in which they're currently putting forth professionalism is not being received or felt in that way. And so I definitely think it's important for folks to be notified of why they're being stopped. And although you're saying that, you believe that as well, it doesn't seem like that information is coming across first thing, and I think that's one of the things that people can respect the most, is that if they have a reason to be stopped, it's like, okay, I understand I'm in the wrong type of thing.
Right. So, anytime, so officers do tell at some point during the interaction between the officer and the driver what the violation, what the stop was for. We are telling our officers to get the license and registration information prior to telling them what that reason was for. And the reason we do that is because before there was it become a battle at the scene. So we tell them, please identify yourself. Again, driving New York State is a privilege. You have to identify yourself to the officer. Once that ID is given, then the officer says, I pulled you over for a tail light, I pulled you over for belly, it comes to a complete stop. Whatever the violation is, it is explained to that driver. I know sometimes people aren't happy if they get a ticket. I know some people aren't happy when they get stopped. They have other things in their mind. I'm going to go get a gallon of milk or whatever. But the fact is that there has to be a probable cause in the form of some sort of violation that causes the officer to stop that car.
I get my question in terms of passenger, because there's a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there's been a few people that have asked me in terms of being pulled over when there is the driver is the one who has the violation, but the passengers, it is appearing to be the actual target of the stop as perceived by the person in the stop. And when they understand it is their right as a passenger not to reveal their ID. But then my understanding from, and I, just correct me if I'm wrong here, for an officer that registers as suspicion, but you've got two people coming from different aspects of understanding the situation. One who thinks it's their right just to say, no, I don't have to give you my ID, and that's that. But then you have an officer that sees that as possible probable cause or just suspicious behavior. And those two differences tend to be clashing in stops. And whereas the person is actually thinking they're just within their rights, and then that should be that, it should be it. And what it seems like is that might be something that escalates the situation possibly in the stop if that passenger refuses to identify themselves. Can you speak to that?
So I can, on a lack of a better term, a routine traffic stop where, say, it's an equipment violation, a brake light's out. The driver will be required to present some sort of identification that says that that's who it is. The passenger is not required at that time to present any type of identification. The dialogue that's occurring in this particular case, as you mentioned with Officer Peterson, is really just a dialogue. If she does not have identification, or he doesn't have identification on them, then it's just dialogue. If they want to sit quietly in the front seat, they can. The driver's the one that is most likely going to get the warning or the ticket. And I say most likely, they will be. So in that particular case, when the passenger is approached, they're checking for the seatbelt. As far as in this particular incident about the hands, you have to understand from a police training perspective, that's what we look for. We look for hands. We ask people when they get pulled over, keep your hands on the wheel, won't make any sudden movements. I know that individuals are nervous at the time. We are aware of that people act kind of funny sometimes when they are nervous. We don't want to come up to the vehicle, especially in a darkened condition where we're just operating with either lights of the car or flashlight, and the subject is the driver's reaching into the glove box or through the center console. Because again, we want to make sure that everyone leaves that scene safe, us and them. And I know sometimes the perceptions that the officer is being somewhat aggressive. The role in this particular case of the backup officer, the passenger side officer, is just to make sure it goes off without a hitch, and ideally to make a conversation, to create a conversation. And if the passenger does not want to, then the passenger doesn't have to.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief, for that report. Appreciated. I want to go on to unfinished business.
Okay. Sorry, Mayor Noble, I just had a request if it was possible for a previous caller to ask a question. I don't know if that's standard or possible.
It's not usually standard once we kind of go through public comment.
Okay.
But I think if there is a question that, they, want to, and that we can answer for them, we can get back to them with it. That would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So unfinished business, I think the one thing that I had on our agenda, and we'll open it up to the commission to see if there are other agenda items that you may have. One of the things that we discussed briefly at our last meeting was the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. This is an initiative that we're working with the Peaceful Guardians program to bring to fruition to be able to work on how we can reimagine how we do policing in our city over in the coming years. And so as part of that initiative, I would like to have a representative from our police commission that would be willing to be a liaison to that group. They're going to be meeting on a monthly basis, as well as with some community forums, throughout the remainder of this fall, with all of the work work wrapping up in early 2021. And so I wanted to see if there was a volunteer that would be willing to do that. If there are multiple volunteers, we'll have to draw straws to see who would like to serve in that role. But as at this point, are there any volunteers that would be willing to serve? Alderman Tony Davis, who's our liaison to the Police Commission, has been appointed as the Common Council liaison to this group. But we do need one of us, that is not me, to serve on this commission, or task force, if you will. So I don't know if folks want to raise their hand if they're interested. I see Minya. Any others?
Can you clarify the liaison? Does that mean we have to just be present? And is the expectation that we're present at all the forums? Like, what is the expectation before Minya keeps raising her hand?
Sure. So I think the expectation is to, attend as many of the meetings and events as we can, but our goal is, I think, to be able to relay important information that and questions that, one, the commission may develop, so that they can come back to the Police Commission to then be able to hear from us about, and two, for us as we continue to work on our own projects as a commission, to be able to have someone that can relay information to them. And so while being present at the meetings is always a plus, it really is so that we can have one point person that can work directly with Lester, to be able to share information, seamlessly back and forth between our commission and this, working group.
And so I understand you just mentioned like maybe the benefit of having one particular point person, but I think I also see a benefit in rotating that person, kind of rotating the responsibilities amongst this commission. Is that something we can consider?
I think that the what that would require is that, for folks that would want to be rotated in, and they would have to be relatively involved kind of in the process to be able to also understand the work that Lester is doing. And so it is a relatively it's designed by the governor and as a mandate for each community that has a police department to do this. And so there are kind of some boundaries that we would have to serve in. And so it would be important that whoever is involved be close enough and willing enough to kind of commit, to doing that. And so, for instance, there was 2 commissioners that would be willing to kind of serve as co-liaisons that wanted to both, put in that effort. Like I'm fine with that, and I would have to let Lester know that that's how we were going to operate, so that multiple commissioners could be added to the kind of the email distributions and the kind of all of the behind the scenes work that's going to occur. But it's going to be a very relatively fast paced process, needing to do the timing of all of this.
I would also suspect that even though it could be a co-liaison, it would be important that Lester knows that he only has one person he has to call, because we don't want to create more work for him, right? To call like Lester can call one commissioner or email.
I've suggested, maybe to Shaniqua's point, maybe
a couple, but
we're a little unique because a lot of what the governor's initiative is pointing towards we already have in place. A lot of communities don't have a public police commission like we have. So ultimately, they're going to make recommendations back to us, according to the current charter, correct, Steve? So the recommendations they make, they're going to make those recommendations back to this commission, which has policy and procedure powers. So I would recommend that Lester maybe come to one of our meetings and update us, have the liaison, but I think it's important that he keeps the entire commission informed of what the agenda items are, because at the end of the day, he's, I don't want to say sells the wrong word, but they're going to make recommendations to our commission that we have to choose whether to enact or not, correct? Given our current format, unless the charter changes.
Yeah, and so there is, as with all of these issues, it is, you know, when the governor made his executive order, he wrote it in a way that, you know, was supposed to cover every community. And so according to the executive order, this task force is supposed to come up with their recommendations and policy changes and procedural operational changes. It's supposed to then be given to the common council, and it's supposed to be then adopted as a local law according to the governor's executive order. How that then impacts our charter and us.
That's at odds with our charter.
Yeah, so we'll have to figure that all out. But what is needed to be given to the governor is an approved plan, basically by the city, which then they don't necessarily, we are kind of the implementation piece of that, if that makes sense. And so,
Yep.
and I think that that's kind of how the governor has it structured. But again, all of our communities are asking the same questions, because there may be ideas that actually go against not only, you know, union contracts, charter change, like charter reform, and there are just bigger questions, and you know that things people could touch on in this process, not even in our community, but in every, you know, place, 500 other communities that are doing this. So there's probably going to be more questions than answers, but I do think that, you know, in the end, you're right. It will, a lot of this is going to come back to us. And so I think that Lester would be more than happy to, you know, spend some time with us as well. But I do think having at least one commissioner, you know, that can also be involved in their process would be
Yep.
good.
So I would be willing to also serve, but I'm thinking more of a tag team. If Minya and I, that way, if one of us is not able to be present, then at one of the forum or one of their meetings, I'm willing to serve in that capacity, but I can't always guarantee that I would be available to be at a meeting for every meeting, because like you said, Mayor, it's going to be a fast-paced process. So I'm just offering that, putting that out there if needed, but I also know Minya will do a fantastic job.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Could I propose, you know, if there were, for my purposes here, could we go ahead and take one person? So if I say, Lester, Minya is going to be your main point of contact, Minya and then Kendrick can work out their own internal schedule and keep each other kind of informed, as if then if there are going to be times where Minya may not be available, Kendrick can just kind of automatically, you can fit yourself right into the process. My understanding is that a lot of these meetings are going to be on Wednesday nights, I believe, you know, once a month for folks to get together virtually, I think at this point. So maybe that could work. Does that seem like that works?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have Minya as the point.
Are we, so we're all good with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, congratulations, Minya. You know, I'm working on the press release right now with Lester, and we've just recently contacted all of the other commission or task force working group members, and so you'll probably see your name in print as early as an hour from now. So,
Okay.
congrats.
Thank you.
Yep. So I had that on my kind of unfinished business, and I think that I don't know where this fits under unfinished business or new business, but I think it'd be good to just spend a few moments just talking about last week's, you know, kind of venture into a virtual public gathering. I want to thank, you know, the commission members for, you know, attending that. It was one of the first times, of course, that we've done such a large virtual meeting to be able to hear from our community members. And while there were some technical difficulties and some, operational difficulties on our end trying to figure out how to do this. I do think that it was an important step to be able to let the community know that, as a commission, we're here to hear their concerns and to, work with the chief to, continue to improve on how, we do policing in the community. And I wanted to see if there was any other feedback that folks wanted to share about that evening. And, at this point, but that was all I had, on unfinished business.
I'll say, and I agree with you 100%. Minnie and I spoke afterwards. The disappointing thing was we couldn't get as much accomplished as we would have liked because of the combination of the technical difficulties. And then I think some people were trying to make it difficult on us. But I hopefully people saw it was a step in the right direction. I wish we could figure out a way that we could organize it and control it, because I think it can be very effective. To give people an opportunity to talk, get to know us, and have some feedback. But the format that we ended up being in, ended up being somewhat dysfunctional, and I think a lot of people felt they couldn't participate or chose not to participate just because it was, too many people talking at once and people jumping in and interrupting. And so I'd like to see us continue it and try to do it again in some format, but hopefully we can get a little more control of, the organization of the whole thing.
And I'll speak to just some of the things that happened. Part of it was a miscommunication, misunderstanding of timing that we had occurred at the same time as the Walk for Black Lives March. And, understandably, some people felt that was disrespectful. And I can understand after talking to a few folks that that's why they felt that way. I don't believe that the intention was to override the meeting the way it happened to the extent that it did. But it was also, like you said, a new format. And so I don't think a lot of people came in understanding what the format was supposed to be and what we were trying to do, because there was a lot of misinformation going around from all sides. And we had to do a lot of, I know quite a few, I don't know how many other people did, but I had to do some calls the next day to just explain to people what the intention of the meeting actually was. And they had actually told me that they had a complete different understanding of what it was for. So I think all those factors together made for just a completely different meeting than we had intended. And we did our best, but it didn't come out the way we had planned. And some of the people that had really wanted to speak about their experiences just didn't get the chance to.
Good point.
And I think one of the things that we can do going forward, if it seems as though we're going to be living in this virtual world for a little while longer, is to, potentially explore some other platforms that could have these public hearings happen. Either we do it kind of in advance where people register for it, and we get their contact information and we kind of invite them in and out of the meeting based on, that. Or we look to see what other options are out there so that we can have, kind of these, public forums, if you will. And I think obviously continuing to remind folks that on a smaller level, we are still available each month like this. And even if we have 2 or 3 speakers each month, continue to talk to us, that allows us to, continue to have these community conversations. So I think that's, we'll just continue to keep reminding the community of that.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So as we talk about what we didn't accomplish on that call, are we still planning like a Q&A in the future? Or I know we wanted to talk about the role of the police commission a little bit more. Is that something we're still planning to do at a future date?
That's a great way to do it too. To create the organization, we may want to encourage to have the next one be a Q&A, where maybe not Q&A, but ask the questions in advance, and then we can spend the next forum answering the questions that were submitted.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. So is there anyone on the commission that would like to, maybe get together outside of this to
kind of talk about maybe what a Q&A type forum could look like. And, also for folks to learn more about our commission and, what our role is and isn't, and, how it operates. And maybe a couple of folks would be willing to work offline to kind of bring that event to fruition.
Sure.
I'd be glad to.
Great. And I know, Summer Smith, our Director of Communications, she's going to help us, in the future with both this meeting and other events that we have to kind of be the behind the scenes technical assistance. But Summer is also willing to help and has already been working with Minya, to set up some of these, special, community engagement sessions. And so she's, like, I don't want to speak for you, Summer, but, more than happy to help, bring this type of event to fruition. So we can help support that. Great. Does anyone have any other unfinished or new business? I know one of the new business items that we have to do each month, that we actually have some this month, is to just do our use of force reviews in executive session. But does anyone have any other?
I got a question. We spoke with the chief and asked him to come up with some form of orientation, new board member orientation, and also training programs for current commissioners. And I just wanted to see if he had any ideas or some sort of timeline or.
Yeah, so.
There he comes. He's coming back.
Sorry about that. So I think, as you mentioned about what the commission would, that Q&A part of it, I think maybe if you came up with a list of things you would feel is appropriate. I mean, I can put you through the police academy if that's what you want. But I think for what we have to do, I think just a basic review of, basic understandings of the police department. But I can make a list and send it out. So you can kind of add to it or delete from it. And what I would suggest is I follow the same list or outline that I use for the Citizens Police Academy. That does give a pretty good overview of what law enforcement does, everything from initial dispatch all the way to specialized unit and emergency response. So within that, certainly within what the capacity of the commission is now with the use of force reviews, there may be some additional trainings that are outside the scope of what we can provide or what we should be providing. So you have a better idea of what to look for when you're looking at some of the body cam footage and reading some of the reports.
And then along the orientation point, Chief, though, I think really it's even important that we have something in place for meeting structure, the charter itself, what the role of the police commission is, what we do and what we don't do, how the meeting normally takes place. I think that would be very helpful to have as a starting point. And then you can identify training you feel we should have, and then what training is a one-time deal and what's something we should do annually, or every 2 years or whatever. And I don't know if that's something maybe the task force is going to look at, or I mean, I just think we had to have something in place. We had clearly the subcommittee of the council was looking for it, and I think all of the commissioners have already all agreed that we should take part in some sort of training so we know what we're looking at.
Yeah, and so I think also from a training perspective, one of the things that has to, and Minya and I have talked about this a little bit, but the Common Council earlier this year allocated funding to, the police department's budget technically, but for us and the community and members of the police department to do additional training in the areas of, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, and better, ways to, police our communities, those types of things. And so that we haven't done that yet. Obviously, with COVID and us being all virtual, it's been a little bit of a challenge. But what I would like to do is to work as a commission to start to identify what we want to do. Because we really need to get that money also spent because it was allocated this year. It would be best for us to at least find the right consultant, to find the right program that we want to use and be able to start to set up trainings
so that they can happen, you know, even if with this COVID environment, we just may have to do them in smaller groups instead of maybe the large classroom style. Thankfully, we have a small commission, so, you know, we should be able to have some trainings for our commission, and then trainings that may be available to others. But that I think got to be on our to-do list this fall. I know, you know, that type of thing will probably also be talked about as part of, you know, the work that this reimagining, you know, group is doing. But I think for us, we really need to get that part of the training, you know, set up. And so there are some different resources that have been, you know, suggested to us, but we really need to just do the homework there and choose what we want to do. And I think that's so that's on our fall homework for sure. Thanks, Brad. Anyone have any other items before we ask for a motion to go into executive session?
Steve, I just wanted to ask if the chief could give me a call when you guys get done, please.
Yeah, I'm sure, Bill, if you're looking for, you know, information related to some of the statistics that the chief mentioned earlier, you know, he's going to be working with our communications director to get that information out to the public.
Well, Steve, I'm writing this story this evening, and the chief gave the report, and I have questions specifically for him. And he talks one-on-one with me, well, when I'm not hammocking or not busy any longer. So if he could give me a call, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I end up writing on what you guys give me during this meeting, and I'd really like to get some specifics. I have questions.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
Chief, I believe you have my number, correct?
Yeah, you can, I'll find it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if not, I'm going to ask for a motion to enter into executive session to review the use of force reviews that we have. Do I have a second or motion for that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shaniqua. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make sure we're going to go to the other link for our executive session. We'll see you in a bit. Thank you.